occasion, and he shows up. And I'm always taken aback because if someone comes to my house and they say, you know what, I can see him come to your house, he's your Gentile. He didn't say those words, he said, but his attitude was, I don't get along with you. That's kind of tough. But it goes back to the woman that told Jesus he had to leave the dogs and the attitude makes a big difference. And so when you're hungry for God, you don't really get offended about a lot of things. So Cornelius wasn't upset about the fact that Peter had his issues, but I'm sure Cornelius had his issues.
Standing in Caesarea by the sea. This is the palace complex of Herod. This was Herod's palace. After the death of Herod the Great, who built it and lived in it when he was here in Caesarea, it became the headquarters and the residence of the Roman rulers of this province of Rome at that time, including Pontius Pilate and later on Felix and Festus. So it was here that the Apostle Paul was brought to appear before Felix and Festus and Agrippa. King Agrippa heard him, and this is where Agrippa said, almost, thou persuadest me to be a Christian. It was also here that Paul, being a Roman citizen, and with the privilege of appealing to Caesar, appealed to Caesar rather than to be turned over to the hands of the Jews and go back to Jerusalem and be tried by them there. So this is where Paul was kept, right here in this palace complex. And this is where he appealed to Caesar. And from here, he went to Rome. very distinct spoke-like shape with houses and shops in the very center, and then the farms going out on the different spokes. Right next to it, you see 3 runways of military Air Force base. There's a fighter jet taking off right now. They're constantly patrolling the skies over Israel because of the security situation. They have to remain alert all the time. So jets are stored underground here, out of sight, but they can be airborne in a matter of minutes, if not seconds. So this is the Valley of Armageddon. Right down here, in this little triangle of highways that you see here, right there in that triangle, there's a tiny brook bed. You can tell the green strip there. That is the brook or the river Kishon or Kishon. This is where Elijah took the prophets of Baal and cut their heads off at the river Kishon right there. It's also where the forces of Sisera were captured, were killed when the Lord intervened, when Sisera and his forces came against the Israelites that were led by Deborah and Barak. The small hill in the distance from here, over beyond the populated mountain, which is very close to Nazareth, is Mount Tabor. That's where Deborah and Barak and the Israelite forces were, and they pushed Sisera's forces this direction, and then God intervened, and Sisera's forces were destroyed. Further this way is Tel-Meggido, where we're fixing to go in just a little while. And then there's also the place where Gideon tested his men by taking them down to the water to drink, and Gideon defeated the Midianites down there at that end of the valley. It's also where the Philistines slew Saul and his sons at Mount Gilboa. So this valley is loaded, like the entire land, with history. is significant for several reasons. First, if you can see the little village toward the right foot of that mountain, that's Shunem. That's where the wise woman of Shunem was, and Elijah passed by continually. And around the other side, just the other side of this Mount Morah from here is Endor. Okay, so come to the right and you see Gilboa. This mountain range here is Mount Gilboa. So here are two battles. The first was Gideon. Gideon's forces were on Mount Gilboa. There's a spring that comes out right at the foot of that mountain, and that's where they were tested. They had to drink. And his forces were reduced at that time from 10,000 to 300. It already lost 20,000 men when those who were afraid were told to go home. So they drank, and there were 300 left. They divided into three troops, 3 groups of 100 each. At the base of Mount Morah were the Midianites. So the Midianites and Gideon met. Gideon surrounded them at night. They broke the trumpets. They blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers, shined the light, and they shouted the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And the Midianites began to panic and kill one another and run that direction all the way over the Jordan. And Gideon chased them and won the battle. A few hundred years pass. Now the Philistines are camped at the foot of Mount Morah, and Saul's army of Israel is at the foot of Mount Gilboa. During the night, Saul went to the other side of Gilboa and visited the witch of Endor, and then he came back. So you can imagine he was exhausted by the time of the next day's battle. The Philistines and the Israelites met in the middle there, Jezreel, and the Philistines chased Saul and his army that direction, and Saul and his sons lost their lives on Mount Gilboa, which is there. And then they took their bodies to Bethshan, where we'll be visiting later on the other side of Mount Gilboa.